Have you ever stopped to wonder what a thought actually is? Not the content of the thought, the memory of yesterday, the plan for tomorrow, or the fleeting image of a face, but the very process of thinking itself. Every single day, your mind produces thousands upon thousands of thoughts. Some arrive like lightning bolts, sudden and intense. Others drift quietly through your awareness, barely noticed before they vanish. But behind each one lies a remarkable chain of biological, electrical, and even philosophical events. Most people imagine thoughts as something intangible, like invisible whispers of the mind. But in truth, a thought is both abstract and concrete. It's abstract because it exists as an idea, something you cannot hold in your hands. Yet it is also physical, because the act of thinking involves real electrical impulses racing across neural networks, chemical messengers flowing between cells, and synchronized brain waves forming patterns that shape what you experience. The mystery of a single thought is that it bridges two worlds: the unseen inner landscape of consciousness and the tangible biological machinery of your brain. Consider this: the thought you are having right now, the awareness of reading these words, is the product of billions of neurons firing in precise harmony. Your eyes capture the symbols on this page, your brain interprets them as language, and your mind attaches meaning. This entire process unfolds so quickly, so seamlessly, that it feels effortless. But beneath the surface, it's one of the most sophisticated operations in the known universe. And this raises deeper questions. Where does a thought truly begin? Does it start with a sensory signal, like seeing an image or hearing a word? Or does it arise from within, sparked by memory, imagination, or some unconscious process beyond your control? Neuroscience can map much of the circuitry, but even today, the full origin of thought remains one of the greatest puzzles of existence. What we do know is this: every thought matters. A single thought can spark a breakthrough invention, ignite an emotion, or even change the course of your life. To understand what really happens when you think is to understand the hidden mechanics of being human. So, let us step inside the brain and follow the journey of a thought, from its spark at the level of neurons to its arrival in conscious awareness. To understand how a thought begins, we must look closely at the fundamental building blocks of the brain: neurons. The human brain contains an estimated 86 billion of these nerve cells, each connected to thousands of others, creating a vast and dynamic network. These neurons don't just sit silently, they are constantly firing, passing signals back and forth in a delicate balance of activity. A thought, in its simplest form, is the result of specific neurons firing in synchrony, creating a recognizable pattern. When you think of something, let's say an apple, it feels instant. You might picture its red skin, its crisp texture, or even recall the tart taste. But what is really happening in that moment is a coordinated dance of electrical and chemical activity. Neurons in your visual cortex may light up with the image of an apple you've seen before. At the same time, memory circuits in the hippocampus pull up past experiences of eating one. Language centers may even activate to associate the word apple with the image. What seems like a single, unified thought is actually the product of different brain regions working together seamlessly. The process begins with an electrical impulse called an action potential. A neuron, when sufficiently stimulated, sends this signal traveling down its axon, like a surge of electricity racing along a wire. This action potential is an all-or-nothing event. Either the neuron fires or it doesn't. The strength of a thought doesn't come from the power of one signal, but from how many neurons fire together and how often they repeat the pattern. At the end of the axon lies a tiny gap known as the synapse. This is where the magic of communication happens. Neurons don't physically touch each other. Instead, they talk across this microscopic space. When an electrical signal reaches the end of the axon, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that leap across the synapse to the neighboring neuron. These molecules, such as glutamate or GABA, either excite the next neuron, encouraging it to fire, or inhibit it, telling it to stay quiet. It is here in the synapse that the true spark of thought occurs. Imagine billions of these tiny sparks firing simultaneously across the brain. Each synaptic connection is like a switch, turning patterns of electrical activity into meaningful signals. Some researchers compare it to an orchestra. The neurons are the musicians, the synapses are the instruments, and the thought itself is the music created when they all play together in harmony. Importantly, not every signal leads to a conscious thought. The brain filters out an enormous amount of activity. While you might be thinking of the apple consciously, your neurons are also managing countless unconscious processes. Regulating your heartbeat, balancing your body, or storing background memories you don't even realize you have. Conscious thought is just the tip of the iceberg. Another fascinating aspect of synaptic activity is plasticity, the brain's ability to strengthen or weaken connections over time. Every time you think of an apple, the network of neurons associated with that thought becomes just a little more efficient. This is why repeated practice, whether learning a new language, mastering a skill, or training your memory, makes certain thoughts easier to access. The saying, "neurons that fire together, wire together," captures this principle perfectly. Thus, the spark of a thought is not a single event, but a complex chain reaction. Neurons fire, synapses transmit, and networks of cells synchronize. From the smallest electrical impulse to the vast web of communication across billions of cells, a thought is born in the hidden electrical storm of your brain. It is both fragile and powerful, fleeting yet capable of shaping entire realities. If neurons and synapses are the building blocks of thought, then brain networks are the architectural design, the systems that determine how these blocks are organized and used. The brain does not think in isolation through single neurons. Instead, vast networks of regions light up and interact depending on what kind of thought is taking place. These networks coordinate everything from daydreaming and self-reflection to problem-solving and decision-making. Understanding them is crucial if we want to grasp how thoughts truly take shape. One of the most fascinating of these is the default mode network, DMN. This network becomes especially active when your mind is at rest, wandering, or reflecting inwardly. It's the part of your brain that lights up when you're daydreaming, replaying past experiences, or imagining the future. In other words, when you're not focusing on the outside world, the DMN takes center stage. Scientists believe it's deeply tied to your sense of self, your inner dialogue, your identity, and the continuous story you tell yourself about who you are. When you catch yourself drifting off into thought, it's the DMN at work. In contrast, when you switch gears and begin concentrating on a task, the Central Executive Network, CEN, steps in. This network involves the prefrontal cortex and parietal regions of the brain, and it handles high-level cognitive functions like reasoning, problem-solving, and working memory. If the DMN is about inner reflection, the CEN is about outward focus, analyzing data, making decisions, and holding multiple pieces of information in your mind at once. Imagine you're solving a math problem or writing a to-do list. That's your CEN in action. But there's another key player that acts as a kind of traffic controller between these two systems. The salience network, SN. This network, which includes the anterior cingulate cortex and insula, is responsible for detecting what matters most in your environment and shifting your attention accordingly. If a sudden loud noise interrupts your daydreaming, the salience network alerts you and helps switch your brain's activity from the default mode network to the central executive network. It ensures you pay attention to what's important in any given moment, whether it's an external stimulus or an internal realization. These three networks, the DMN, CEN, and SN, don't work in isolation. They are in constant communication, toggling your attention between introspection, focus, and external stimuli. A healthy brain can transition smoothly among them, But disruptions in these networks are linked to mental health conditions. For example, overactivity in the DMN is associated with rumination and depression, while difficulties engaging the CN are connected to disorders like ADHD. This shows just how influential these networks are in shaping not just your thoughts, but also your emotional well-being and behavior. Another intriguing feature of these networks is their role in creativity. Creative thinking often requires the DMN to generate novel ideas and the CN to evaluate and refine them, while the salience network helps decide which ideas are worth pursuing. When these systems are well-balanced, a thought can transform from a vague idea into a structured plan or even an innovative breakthrough. In this way, the networks of your brain don't just produce thoughts, they sculpt them into meaningful, usable forms. So, when you think, it's not just about individual neurons firing or neurotransmitters flowing. It's about entire networks of regions collaborating, competing, and coordinating. Every thought you have, whether it's a daydream, a focused calculation, or a sudden insight, is the product of these dynamic systems working together. They form the hidden stage where the drama of the mind unfolds, guiding the shift from abstract sparks of activity to coherent, conscious experience. If electrical impulses are the sparks that ignite thought, then chemistry is the fuel that sustains it. At the microscopic level, every thought depends on a delicate cocktail of chemicals called neurotransmitters. These molecules are released into the synaptic gaps between neurons, carrying signals across and shaping not only whether a thought forms, but also what kind of thought it becomes: joyful or fearful, focused or distracted, fleeting or deeply memorable. Think of neurotransmitters as the language neurons use to communicate. Without them, electrical signals would stop at the edge of one cell, unable to leap to the next. Each neurotransmitter has its own tone in this language, influencing your thoughts in unique ways. Let's begin with glutamate, the brain's primary excitatory neurotransmitter. It's the accelerator pedal encouraging neurons to fire. When you are engaged in learning, memory formation, or processing new information, glutamate is everywhere, making sure signals travel efficiently. On the flip side, GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, serves as the brain's brake. It calms excessive activity, prevents overstimulation, and helps regulate focus. The balance between glutamate and GABA creates the rhythm of thought. Too much excitation leads to anxiety or chaotic thinking. Too much inhibition and the mind becomes sluggish. Another major player is dopamine, often called the reward chemical, though its role is far more complex. Dopamine helps determine which thoughts and actions feel important. When dopamine levels spike, your brain flags certain experiences as rewarding or worth remembering. This is why a positive experience, like solving a problem or enjoying a favorite meal, can feel so satisfying. The dopamine reinforces the thought and makes it more likely to recur. But dopamine also drives motivation and focus, helping you zero in on specific ideas and ignore distractions. Without it, thoughts lose their spark, as seen in conditions like Parkinson's disease or attention deficit disorders. Serotonin, on the other hand, regulates mood and emotional tone. It shapes how thoughts feel. A balanced serotonin system allows your thoughts to flow with a sense of stability and well-being. When serotonin is low, the same thought can feel heavy, repetitive, or negative, contributing to anxiety and depression. This is why many antidepressants target serotonin pathways, aiming to restore balance so thoughts don't spiral into destructive patterns. Then there's acetylcholine, the chemical of attention and memory. When you decide to focus on reading a sentence, solving a puzzle, or remembering a phone number, acetylcholine is released to sharpen your concentration. It helps fine-tune neural circuits, making certain thoughts stand out more vividly against the background noise of countless others. These neurotransmitters don't act in isolation. They interact like instruments in a symphony. A single thought may require dopamine to spark motivation, acetylcholine to sharpen focus, glutamate to excite the network, GABA to keep it under control, and serotonin to color it with emotion. If one instrument falls out of tune, the whole composition of thought can feel dissonant. The chemistry of thought also reveals why our internal state, sleep, nutrition, stress affects how we think. Sleep deprivation reduces dopamine and serotonin levels, leaving thoughts scattered and moods unstable. Chronic stress floods the brain with cortisol, which disrupts glutamate balance and damages synaptic connections in areas like the hippocampus, impairing memory and learning. Even the food you eat alters brain chemistry, since amino acids from protein are the raw materials for neurotransmitters. In a very real sense, what you consume shapes the very quality of your thoughts. So when we say a thought is just in your head, it's worth remembering that it is also in your chemistry. Every flash of insight, every memory, every passing worry or joy is colored and carried by neurotransmitters. These microscopic messengers are the alchemy of thought, turning raw electrical signals into living experiences that define who we are. If neurons are the sparks of thought and neurotransmitters are the fuel, then brain waves are the rhythm. Every second, billions of neurons in your brain fire electrical signals. When large groups of them fire together in synchrony, they generate patterns of oscillations, what we call brain waves. These aren't just abstract measurements on an EEG machine. They are the hidden rhythms that organize how thoughts emerge, flow, and connect. Brain waves are generally categorized into 5 main types: gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta, each associated with a particular state of mind. They are measured by their frequency, or how fast they oscillate, in cycles per second hertz. At the highest frequency is the gamma wave, 30 to 100 hertz, often linked to moments of peak concentration, problem solving, and even bursts of insight. When different regions of your brain need to bind information together, like recognizing a face while also recalling the person's name, gamma waves synchronize the activity. Some researchers believe gamma oscillations are the signature of consciousness itself, helping unify sensory input and thought into a seamless experience. If a sudden aha moment ever lit up your mind, chances are gamma waves played a key role. Below gamma are the beta waves, 13 to 30 hertz, the rhythm of everyday thought. Beta is dominant when you're alert, engaged, and actively thinking. Reading these words right now likely has your brain in beta mode, focusing on language and comprehension. However, too much beta activity can feel like overthinking, racing thoughts, worry, or mental restlessness. In moderation, beta is the wave of productivity. In excess, it becomes the wave of anxiety. When the brain relaxes but remains alert, alpha waves, 8 to 12 hertz, take over. These are often called the bridge between conscious thought and the subconscious. Alpha states occur during calm reflection, meditation, or creative daydreaming. In this state, the mind is open, imaginative, and less constrained by logical control. Artists, musicians, and innovators often thrive when their brains settle into alpha rhythms, where new ideas can surface more freely. Deeper still are the theta waves, 4 to 7 hertz, associated with drowsiness, dreaming, and deep states of creativity. Theta rhythms dominate during REM sleep and moments of vivid imagination. They allow the subconscious mind to weave together symbols, emotions, and fragments of memory into new forms. Many spiritual traditions see theta as a gateway to intuition, where the rational mind loosens its grip and new insights can emerge from hidden depths. At the slowest frequency are the delta waves, 0.5 to 3 hertz, the deep, restorative rhythms of dreamless sleep. In this state, conscious thought as we know it disappears, Yet delta waves play a vital role in memory consolidation and brain recovery. Without them, the neural machinery that generates thoughts during waking life would quickly wear down. The fascinating truth is that the brain rarely operates in a single wave at a time. Instead, thoughts arise from the dynamic interplay of multiple rhythms. While beta might dominate during a focused task, bursts of gamma may punctuate with moments of clarity, and underlying alpha or theta oscillations can still influence the creative texture of the thought. This constant layering gives thought both structure and flexibility. Brain waves also explain why our mental states are so sensitive to environment and practice. Stress pushes the brain into high beta overdrive, crowding out creativity. Meditation increases alpha and theta, opening space for calm reflection. Even simple breathing exercises can shift wave patterns, literally reshaping the quality of thought in real time. In essence, brain waves are the silent conductors of the mind. They provide the tempo by which neurons fire, ensuring that thoughts don't arrive as chaotic noise but as organized patterns of awareness. When they are balanced, the mind flows with clarity, creativity, and focus. When disrupted, thoughts scatter, race, or collapse into confusion. Thus, the rhythm of thought is not metaphorical, it is literal. Every idea, decision, or insight you experience rides upon the waves of your brain, carried by frequencies that have been shaping human consciousness for as long as we have existed. So far, we've explored how neurons fire, neurotransmitters transmit, and brain waves rhythmically orchestrate activity. But not every spark of neural activity reaches your conscious mind. Most of the brain's work happens below awareness, in layers of subconscious processing that are constantly running in the background. Conscious thought, the experience of "I am thinking this," is a remarkable phenomenon. It's the moment when a pattern of electrical and chemical activity becomes you. A key player in bringing thought into awareness is the thalamus, often called the brain's relay station. The thalamus receives input from sensory organs, other brain regions, and even internal signals. Its job is to filter and prioritize what gets through to the cortex, the outer layer of the brain responsible for higher cognition. Only certain signals are amplified, while the vast majority are suppressed. This filtering is why you can focus on a single conversation in a noisy room, yet remain oblivious to countless background sounds. The thalamus, in essence, decides which neural sparks are worthy of conscious attention. Next is the prefrontal cortex, the region behind your forehead, which integrates, evaluates, and contextualizes these signals. When a thought reaches the prefrontal cortex, it is not just registered. It is interpreted, framed, and often connected to memory, emotion, and intention. This is where your brain transforms raw electrical impulses into a coherent mental experience. Without the prefrontal cortex, thoughts may occur but lack the narrative coherence that makes them recognizable as your thoughts. Interestingly, the brain can generate a thought before you are consciously aware of it. Neuroscientists have discovered that in many cases, decisions and intentions can be predicted from neural activity milliseconds, or even seconds, before the person reports having made a conscious choice. This raises profound questions about free will. If the brain prepares a thought before you consciously know it, is awareness merely the final stage of a pre-written neural program? Whatever the answer, the process highlights the gap between unconscious processing and conscious experience. Attention is another crucial factor. Even if a thought arises, it may never reach awareness unless your brain allocates resources to it. The salience network, which we discussed earlier, helps determine what deserves focus. When a thought resonates with emotion, novelty, or relevance to your goals, it is more likely to be amplified and brought to the forefront of consciousness. Lesser thoughts, even if generated by the same networks, fade into the background. This is why some ideas suddenly pop into your mind while others remain lost in the noise of mental activity. Memory plays a complementary role. Conscious thoughts are often constructed by combining incoming information with stored experiences. The hippocampus retrieves fragments of memory, which the prefrontal cortex then integrates with current context, shaping a thought that is both new and meaningful. Even abstract ideas, like imagining a future invention or planning a complex task, draw heavily on this interplay between past experiences and present neural activity. Finally, emotion colors the transition from neural spark to conscious awareness. The amygdala, the brain's emotional center, can either amplify or suppress thoughts based on perceived significance or threat. A sudden fear, joy, or curiosity can propel a thought into full awareness, making it feel urgent or compelling. In short, conscious thought is not a single event but a carefully orchestrated emergence. A neural spark ignites, chemicals fuel the signal, networks coordinate, waves synchronize, and specialized regions filter, integrate, and prioritize. By the time a thought enters awareness, it has passed through an intricate gauntlet, transforming from raw activity into the vivid, recognizable experience we call thinking. Consciousness, then, is less the origin of thought and more its grand unveiling, a moment where the invisible machinery of the brain becomes visible in the theater of the mind. Once a thought reaches your conscious mind, it rarely appears out of nowhere. Most thoughts are built from the bricks of memory, woven together with the threads of imagination, and guided by the neural networks and chemistry we've already explored. Memory and imagination are not separate faculties. They are deeply intertwined. Your brain constantly recombines fragments of past experiences to generate new ideas, insights, and possibilities. This is how you can picture something you've never seen, invent a novel solution, or create art that has never existed before. At the center of this process is the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure buried deep within the temporal lobe. The hippocampus acts as a library and librarian at the same time. It stores experiences, organizes them, and retrieves them when needed. When you think about your last vacation, for instance, neurons in the hippocampus fire to recall sights, sounds, smells, and emotions associated with that memory. But a thought rarely relies on a single memory. Instead, the hippocampus recombines multiple fragments, connecting the red of a sunset from one memory with the sound of waves from another, producing a seamless mental image. Imagination works similarly, but instead of recalling what has already happened, it recombines memories in novel ways. This ability is essential for creativity. When you dream up a futuristic device, write a story, or even plan your day, your brain is not pulling experiences like items off a shelf. It is actively generating new neural patterns by linking existing information in innovative ways. The same networks used for remembering the past are repurposed to simulate potential futures, demonstrating that imagination is a natural extension of memory. Language plays a pivotal role here as well. The brain's language centers, Broca's area and Wernicke's area, help label, structure, and communicate thoughts internally. When you think in words, your brain encodes concepts with meaning, allowing abstract ideas to take form. This internal narration is not just a byproduct of thinking. It actively shapes the structure of your thoughts, influencing reasoning, planning, and emotional interpretation. Emotion further colors memory and imagination. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure, flags emotionally significant experiences, making them more likely to be recalled and used in thought creation. Joyful or traumatic memories are more vivid because of this prioritization, influencing both what you think about and how you feel while thinking. Similarly, emotions can guide imagination. Fear can make you imagine worst-case scenarios. Curiosity can spark exploration, and hope can shape visionary ideas. Memory and imagination also underpin problem-solving and learning. When faced with a challenge, the brain searches for patterns in past experiences, simulates potential outcomes, and evaluates which solutions might work best. This dynamic process, often subconscious at first, allows you to innovate, adapt, and predict future events. Creativity, therefore, is not a mysterious talent but a natural product of a brain wired to recombine experience in meaningful ways. Interestingly, this process demonstrates that thoughts are rarely truly original. They are mosaics of past experiences, emotions, and knowledge. Yet, the recombination of these elements creates an illusion of novelty, giving rise to ideas that feel entirely new. In this way, your mind is both a memory archive and a thought factory, a self-renewing system capable of generating endless mental content from finite resources. Ultimately, memory and imagination show that thought is not static. Every idea is built on the past but reaches toward the future. Each thought is a bridge, connecting who you were with who you might become. The creative power of the human mind, then, lies not in having isolated sparks of insight but in the extraordinary ability to recombine, reinterpret, and imagine, transforming memory into meaning and experience into possibility. So far, we've explored thoughts as the product of neurons firing, neurotransmitters transmitting, and brain waves orchestrating rhythms. But what if that's not the full story? What if thinking is not just a biological phenomenon but also touches deeper, more mysterious layers of existence? Philosophers, physicists, and neuroscientists have long grappled with this question, challenging the assumption that thoughts are purely material events confined to the brain. One of the central questions of philosophy is the mind-body problem. How can something as intangible as consciousness emerge from a physical organ made of cells and chemicals? Descartes famously proposed dualism, the idea that mind and body are separate. Modern neuroscience tends to lean toward monism, viewing thought as an emergent property of brain activity. Yet even with sophisticated brain imaging, we cannot fully explain subjective experience, the vivid, qualitative sense of what it is like to think. Why does a pattern of electrical impulses feel like awareness? This enduring mystery suggests that thought might not be reducible to biology alone. Quantum theories of consciousness take this mystery a step further. Some researchers, like Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, propose the orchestrated objective reduction, orchestroar theory, suggesting that quantum processes inside neurons may play a role in conscious thought. According to this idea, microtubules within neurons can exist in superposition, multiple states at once, allowing the brain to process information in ways that classical physics cannot explain. If true, it implies that consciousness, and by extension thought, might have a quantum dimension, hinting at connections between the mind and the fundamental fabric of reality. Other quantum perspectives focus on the observer effect, the notion that observation can influence the behavior of particles. Some theorists speculate that thoughts, as acts of observation and intention, might similarly influence reality at subtle levels. While controversial and far from proven, these ideas resonate with ancient spiritual traditions, which often assert that consciousness is not just an epiphenomenon of the body, but a primary force shaping experience. From this viewpoint, thinking is not merely internal chatter. It may be a bridge between the inner mind and the external world. Philosophical explorations also highlight the strange timing of thought. Experiments in neuroscience have shown that neural activity predicting a decision often occurs milliseconds before we become consciously aware of it. This raises profound questions about free will and the nature of choice. Are thoughts ours? Or do we become aware of them only after the brain has already generated them? Some philosophers argue that consciousness may be more about observing and integrating thought than originating it, suggesting that awareness itself is an emergent, reflective layer atop complex neural dynamics. Moreover, the philosophical and quantum edges remind us that thought is not merely functional, it is profoundly creative. By imagining, hypothesizing, and contemplating abstract concepts, humans can reach beyond immediate sensory input and tangible experience. This capacity allows us to formulate mathematics, create art, write literature, and envision futures that do not yet exist. Thought becomes a bridge between reality as it is and reality as it could be, a medium through which consciousness interacts with time, memory, and possibility. Ultimately, exploring thought through philosophy and quantum theory challenges our assumptions about the mind. While biology explains how thoughts arise, these perspectives invite us to ask why they exist and whether they might be part of something larger than the physical brain. Are we simply the sum of our neural connections, or are our thoughts a glimpse into a deeper, more mysterious order underlying the universe? Though answers remain elusive, acknowledging these edges enriches our understanding, reminding us that each thought is both a biological event and a doorway to wonder. From the microscopic sparks of neurons to the sweeping waves of synchronized brain activity, the journey of a single thought is nothing short of extraordinary. Each thought is born in the complex interplay of electrical impulses, chemical messengers, and rhythmic oscillations that ripple through the networks of your brain. Memory, imagination, and attention sculpt these sparks into coherent ideas, while emotion, focus, and context shape their meaning and impact. Even at this intricate level, however, we catch only a glimpse of the true wonder of thought, a phenomenon that sits at the crossroads of biology, consciousness, and perhaps even the fundamental nature of reality. Understanding the mechanics of thought empowers us. It reveals that our minds are not passive vessels but active, malleable systems capable of remarkable creativity and insight. Thoughts are both fragile and potent. A fleeting idea can vanish in an instant or ignite inspiration that changes the course of your life. They can heal or harm, motivate or paralyze, depending on how they are nurtured and directed. Every choice, action, and innovation begins as a thought, a spark that can ripple outward, shaping behavior, relationships, and even the world itself. Beyond their practical impact, thoughts invite awe. They remind us that consciousness is not just a product of matter, but a dynamic process with layers that remain mysterious and compelling. Neuroscience reveals the how, mapping neurons, synapses, neurotransmitters, networks, and waves. Philosophy and quantum theory ask the deeper questions of why and what if, suggesting that thoughts may touch something far greater than the physical brain. In every sense, thinking is both an intimate act and a cosmic mystery, a process that is at once deeply personal and universally resonant. Recognizing the power of thought also invites responsibility. What you dwell on, imagine, and focus upon becomes encoded in your neural pathways, influencing your emotions, decisions, and perception of reality. By understanding the intricate machinery behind thinking, we gain tools for mindfulness, self-awareness, and mental mastery. We can choose to cultivate thoughts that expand our insight, deepen our creativity, and guide us toward intentional living. In the end, each thought is more than an event in your brain. It is a spark of consciousness, a bridge between inner experience and outer reality, and a reminder that the human mind is one of the most sophisticated, mysterious, and powerful forces in existence. The next time a thought arises, pause and marvel. Within that brief, invisible moment lies the power to imagine, create, and transform everything around you.